All right. Well, welcome to tonight's program, everybody. Restoration, preservation, and distribution of movies during a pandemic. Our program is brought to you by the Anne Arundel County Public Library, based in Annapolis, Maryland. This is part of our Great Movies program that began in 2016 with in-person movie screenings. Do we remember those? Those were held at the Severna Park Library, where I work. And for the past 6 months, we've met virtually, as we will continue to do for some time, it appears. But I'm very glad you joined us tonight. My name is Andy Wolverton, and I'm pleased to be joined by my library colleague, friend, and partner in crime, Darnice Jasper, who will be handling your chat questions tonight. Always great to have you, Darnice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we've got some more great programs coming up, including The Future of Movie Theaters, with special guest Todd Hitchcock, Director of Programming at the AFI Silver. That's going to be on Friday, October the 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern. In November, we're going to take a look at the best books about movies from 2020 with Raquel Stetcher. And in January, a discussion of the Michael Curtiz film, The Proud Rebel, with author and film historian Alan K. Rohde. And there's much, much more. So if you would like to have some more information on these and other movie discussion programs, I would love for you to email me at awolverton, that's AWOLVERTON, at aacpl.net. And I would be glad to add you to our email list. So before I introduce tonight's guest, I wanted to go over just a little bit of the format for tonight. I'll be asking our guests questions that have been previously sent in by email. Those questions will be asked first. Then Darnice will be taking your questions from the chat. Those questions can be sent at any time during the program. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible, so we ask for your patience. We know there's going to be a lot of those questions. And again, thank you so much for joining us. So tonight's guest certainly probably needs no introduction for anybody that's logged onto this webinar, is a writer, journalist, filmmaker, and the host of TCM's Noir Alley, as well as the founder and president of the Film Noir Foundation. And of course, he's the czar of noir. We are so pleased tonight to welcome Eddie Muller. Eddie, thank you so much for joining us.
It is my pleasure. Thank you both very much. And Andy, I especially thank you for all your support over these years, because you have become a very, very familiar figure at Noir City Film Festivals around the country. You're not just locked into one region. You actually attend all over the place. So I really thank you very, very much for that.
You're welcome. I'm glad
good to meet you for the first time, Darnice. Good to meet you.
So, Eddie, a couple of questions I wanted to ask you before we get to the email questions and the chat questions. So, can you tell us a little bit, especially for people who may not know, a little bit about how you and the Film Noir Foundation got started in film preservation and restoration?
Yeah, it was completely ass backwards. I had written a book, Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir. And in efforts to promote that book, I was invited to program film festivals. In the course of doing that, I was shocked to see how many films had disappeared that you just couldn't find, because there were things that I had written about in the book that I had only seen on like a borrowed VHS tape that somebody copied it off TV. Because I did this book and all the research for it pre DVD or any of that stuff. So I was a little shocked to discover that not all films survive. And so after the festivals were successful for a few years, I said, well, this is silly. I mean, we should just use the money from the festivals to go out and find the films that are missing and try to restore them. So all of my knowledge and working practical experience in film restoration came on the job. It's nothing I went to school to learn. There are a lot of, we now have a scholarship through the Film Noir Foundation to actually train people in how to do this. But I have absolutely no expertise in it at all, other than I consider myself a lobbyist really for classic cinema, although noir is sort of the spear tip, if you will. I don't, I would hope that people who come to classic cinema through the work I do don't stop there. And that it is the way they enter, and then they broaden their horizons with experiencing everything else. Much like you, Andy. I know that you are a noir guy and you're very well versed in all this stuff, but that is not the limit of your interest.
So, and this is kind of a weird question, and we never expected to be in this place to have this type of question. But I know that, Eddie, a big part of film restoration is done in order to have good prints of these films available to show at Noir City festivals. Since those festivals aren't going on right now, obviously that changes things. So how does the pandemic affect what you're doing with the Film Noir Foundation right now?
The answer is very dramatically. When I sort of early on, all of this was happening. The development of the Film Noir Foundation happened very early on in the rise of digital technology. Like I said, there really wasn't any digital technology to speak of when I started doing this. I sort of hitched my wagon early on because I felt digital technology was so in so much in the early stages of its development that it couldn't be trusted. And so I hitched my wagon to the idea of film as film. That I wanted that artifact, right? And I wanted the films to be restored in the form that they were originally created in, right? Film. And I had a lot of miserable experiences with people trying to convince me that digital was the way to go and the films looked bad. I almost got into fistfights in the lobbies of theaters with people. I drove 100 miles to see this, and you didn't tell me it was going to be a digital screening and blah, blah, blah. I've been down that road a million times now. But now, so over time, what happened was I realized we weren't only saving the films, then it was we're saving the film going experience, because the films proved the film festivals proved to be so popular that we were packing theaters, in excess of their normal capacity, right? The Castro Theater in San Francisco, you've been there, Andy, we would get 1,400 people on a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. There was no other theater in San Francisco that came even 50% of that, right? So it was kind of miraculous. And then that became a big part of our mission, was to preserve the film going experience. And I always say the next stage is you have to preserve the audience, because there's an educational component to what we do, which is convincing younger people to go see these movies the way they were meant to be seen in a theater, right? And that sort of became the rallying cry of the Film Noir Foundation. Now, all those venues are closed, right? I mean, Todd, who you're having on as a guest coming up from the AFI Silver, I owe him a phone call because we're going to discuss what shape a new Noir City event might assume, right? So it is affecting us quite dramatically. The whole is 35 millimeter dying out question, this sort of exacerbates it, because you're only going to get 35 millimeter in a movie theater. And the challenge I'm faced with right now is using those events as a primary source of fundraising is now really problematic, because let's say a venue like the Music Box Theater in Chicago, which is a little over 600 capacity, they have reopened, but they're only letting in 60 or 70 people at a time. We can't, that doesn't serve as a fundraising outlet for us any longer. So these are questions we are asking ourselves right now in real time, Andy. In fact, earlier today, I was on the phone with Jeffrey Messino, who runs Flickr Alley, the great digital publishing company that does all this stuff. And we work with them getting our restorations out on Blu-ray and DVD. And we were discussing this very subject, like what can we do as partners to try to keep this out there, given that you're not going to see hundreds of people in a movie theater for a while yet.
Yeah.
So I don't have a quick answer for you, but I can tell you that this is what we think about all the time now.
Yeah. I it's something that I think about a lot, because all my friends are saying, like I'm going to the theater to see the new Christopher Nolan movie, and I'm going to have to drive to another county that's going to let us do it. Our county is still not open movie theaters here, but some of the neighboring counties have. And, I understand that, but I'm still not ready to go to a theater yet. I know there's lots of other people that aren't. But again, they want to support, all the people that have been going to the Noir City festivals and watching Noir Alley, I know they want to support what you're doing with Film Noir Foundation, and I know we're going to get into some of that about how people can keep supporting that. You could address some of that now if you want, or we could come back to it.
Well, I just to tag on to this, to speak generally about the future of movie going and how what we do is different. The economics of it are very different because we're using movie going as a fundraising activity. The movie theaters, for example, if you're going to see Chris Nolan's new movie, they would love to have a packed house for that. But let's face it, most movie theaters in this country right now are not making money anyway, because it'll be a 200-seat auditorium, and if they get 50 people for a screening, and that's pre-pandemic, that's about what they're expecting, right? That's what they're hoping for. Not on a Friday or a Saturday night, but any other night of the week, that would be okay. So that's almost socially distant to begin with.
Right.
And then the movie theaters are making their money on concessions, and and so you see venues like the Alamo Drafthouse, where it's really the restaurant arm of the operation that's making. It's a slim margin, but that's where they're making money. They make money in the bar. Everybody makes money in the bar.
Right.
But guess what? The bar is now the worst possible place for you to be. This is cutting my heart out, right? I live behind bars. So to not be able to go and socialize in a bar is killing me.
Yeah.
And that's how a lot of cinemas were now surviving, because they put a bar in with the movie going experience. So it really is a challenge, because for us to make money, we have to fill the theater. And we had to do it like it was a festival. Like this movie is showing once.
Yeah.
You've noticed this at our festivals. We don't have repeat screenings of things. You have one chance to see the movie, and that's why we get this great vibe in the theater, because everybody's sharing that wonderful communal feeling of, I just saw this, some rare German film from 1960 that nobody even heard of before. Mm-hmm. And then you're the 500 people who now have seen it in a movie theater. That gives people a high, when they leave the venue. And we are not going to have that for a while now.
Yeah. That's sad to think about. But no, there's so many of us that and I know you more than anybody, you long to see these things on screen, and the theater's packed, and the excitement, and for anybody that has never been to a Noir City Festival, especially in San Francisco, there's just something that happens that I can't describe. It's like you said, Eddie. It's just, and when I met you at Noir City, DC years ago, and I was writing down everything you said when you introduced movies, and we had a lot of conversations. And you said, you know, you really should come to the San Francisco Festival. That's the flagship, and I did, and it just blew my mind. Well,
in fact, you wrote a beautiful essay about your trip to that festival that I then used in the next year's program.
Yeah, and thank you so much.
Explain to the uninitiated, you know, this is what we're all about, you know. So look, I don't want to be a total downer here. I do believe that this too shall pass, right? I mean, the 1918 epidemic passed, you know.
Yeah.
And this will pass, and movies will emerge from this in a new way. You know, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think that the Noir City model is certainly something that people are going to take into account when we do reemerge. I mean, I will say, on a positive note, I've had contacts from other venues that want to do Noir City festivals as soon as it is possible.
Yeah.
Again, right? So, so I hold out hope. In the meantime, we got to go to Plan B.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't wait until we're able to do that again, like so many. Well, let me. I want to get to the questions, but there's one more question I want to ask. We were talking about educating the audience, and here's something I'd like for you to address. It's a problem that Darnice and I have run into with library movie discussions, and you've faced it much more than we have, and that is how to present classic films that contain problematic or politically incorrect material to modern audiences who may not only be offended by a particular scene or a film, but they may think, if this is what classic films are like, count me out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine in libraries you face this all the time, and the same questions exist. Like, do we just take this book out of circulation because it offends? Some people find it offensive, and I will say that this is an issue that we face, that I have faced on my own, but it's something that we're looking at Turner Classic Movies right now. Like and every host has their own way of approaching it, but I think we're all kind of on the same page, and that is, nobody wants to pull anything from circulation. Our job, right? We didn't know that it was going to be this essential, but our job is to be curators and guidance counselors, if you will. But we have to provide the context so that people can accept what they're watching, right? I mean, look, history is a process. You know, we don't get it right out of the gate. And the movies exist to prove that to us, right? We thought this was a good idea one time, right? Now we're in a different place. So personally, I have as much issue with people who say, hey, you know, I don't want you to show that movie because you can fill in the blank, right? Because it only portrays African Americans in a stereotypical way. Or, you know, John Wayne is showing hatred to the Native Americans. You know, and it goes both ways, right? And I'm sure that, you know, there are people on the other side of the fence politically who think, oh, you're applying an agenda to the way you're presenting the films, right? You should take the politics out of it. And it's like, sorry, you kind of can't. You know, that's why this is history, right? I mean, when people, you know, 50 years from now look back on this time in history, you're not going to believe what they're going to say about us, right? Like, seriously? People couldn't wear the masks? Really? You know, so, you know, it's a challenge. And it is, again, just like the thing with what shape will movies take as a public event, we are right now writing, at least at TCM, we are starting to write the I don't want to call them guidelines because they're not really guidelines. A lot of it is just common sense about how to properly present these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. Like, how do you deal with something? I don't know. I'll just, because I did this jazz and film thing. You know, you show a film like this picture New Orleans that I showed. That was one of the few movies that Billie Holiday is actually in, and Louis Armstrong's in it. And it's parts of it are so embarrassing for the way they're treating African American culture and the way they're treating the music, and like you have to have a white star lead you through it and all this stuff. And it's just atrocious in a lot of ways. I'm going to show it, right? Because it's Louis Armstrong, you know, on film.
Right.
And yeah, Billie Holiday has to play the white woman's maid in the movie. And it's like, oh man, I mean, it hurts your heart to see this, you know? But I'm going to show it. I'm not going to say that's disgraceful. We're not going to show it. Of course we're going to show it. So, you know, same disc, you know, Jackie Stewart, you know, my colleague at Turner Classic Movies, I didn't think when she signed up to be a co-host, I don't think she knew what she was walking into. Because now
I think she did.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she obviously, she's an incredibly bright person. But you know, it just exploded. The whole Gone with the Wind thing exploded, and then HBO was going to show it, and then they're not going to show it, and then they're going to show it, and you know, all of a sudden, Jackie is right there at the top of Gone with the Wind, talking to people about how to experience this movie without letting what's incorrect get in the way of experiencing the film. Right? Because on the one hand, it has its absurd treatment of slavery. On the other hand, there's arguably the greatest movie ever made, has a very, very strong female central character, right? Which is a very, you know, finally, people are looking at that, you know. So, yeah, there's a lot to deal with there, Andy.
Yeah, and I know we'll be dealing with it for quite a while. That's just one of the things we'll have. Well, let me get on to some questions that people have asked. So here is our first question, and this comes from Chuck Pickerel from Chicago. And Chuck asks, what film would be high on your list for the Film Noir Foundation to restore, but for whatever reasons you've been unable to do so?
Well, that's an interesting question, Chuck. And I know Chuck. And I'm just going to give Chuck a shout out because he is a volunteer when we do the Noir City Film Festivals in Chicago. Chuck and his wife Erica, great people. So I have a superstition talking about the movies that I want to restore, because if I don't tell you, then you don't know whether I failed or not, right? So you know, there's well, I'll just tell you one right off the top is DOA. You know, is a film that I think could benefit from a restoration, and I'm not going to go in all the details as to why that hasn't transpired. There's a lot of different reasons as to why these things happen or don't happen, and a lot of it has to do with, you know, you raise money, and the people who support the foundation are so incredibly great. You would not believe the number of $20 donations we get. That's, you know, it's a lot, and it sustains things. It's not like going out and always getting a $50,000 grant or something. I mean, the bedrock of the foundation is people giving $20, you know. I am the steward of that money, and I would hate to spend it recklessly. So when you have to restore a film, you really have to make sure that you have found what you are positive are the best elements that you can find to do that restoration, because you do not want to get into a predicament where you're spending $85,000 to $100,000 to restore a film from a substandard element And then in the middle of the process, somebody says, "Hey, we just found the original negative over here," and it's like, "Oh my God, I just wasted that money." So that's why we're very, very cautious about restoring this stuff. And but it's a tricky thing. I say DOA, but also, there are unknown films. So this is a tricky uh, path that we tread, because a lot of people are like, wow, I'd love to finally see a great, beautiful, restored version of a movie we all know. And does that have more value than us finding a movie that nobody knows anything about, that hasn't registered on, the map of cinema history, you know? And I feel like when we found El Vampiro Negro, this film in Argentina that is a remake or a reimagining of Fritz Lang's M, right after the version that was made by Joseph Losey in Los Angeles, this was like a miraculous thing. Nobody knew about this film. I mean, I talked to my colleagues in France, and they're like, "What is this movie? I don't know this. I don't know this film that you speak of, the Vampiro Negro. What is that?" And when you're able to tell the French about a movie that they've never heard of,
they don't know.
Man, that is living large, So these are, I know I'm kind of evading Chuck's question because I don't have the one, because it's a fluid thing. It's all based on where are we at with the financing, where are we at with finding the elements. It was Too Late for Tears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the film that when we started this whole process, it's like, we got to find that. And I mean, it was a long, drawn out process with a lot of fits and starts. And then finally we did it, and that was great. But now I'm just learning there's so much stuff out there. And what I love is that it's a learning process for me, because now that I have a profile and a reputation, people around the world approach me and say, "Have you ever seen this movie? Do you know about this film? There's this great Brazilian heist movie. Have you ever seen it?" And so one of my challenges is trying to, right now, a thing I'm really engaged in is trying to convince people who love noir and who are in this country to broaden their horizons and see beyond the national borders, because there's a lot of great films out there that I think we would be doing a great service to cinema history by restoring and reviving these unknown movies, right? So that's something that I'm always kind of focused on.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So here's a question from Jan Blom, one of our Great Movies regulars. And I've never thought about this, but I think I'm looking forward to your answer. Ava Gardner made an extraordinary appearance as a femme fatale in The Killers from 1946. Why do you think she wasn't used in other film noir movies?
Because she became, well, they're interesting. There is one other one made right about the same time called Whistle Stop with George Raft, where she's even younger than she is in The Killers. That's a movie that's really, really hard to find. So we might, geez, if it was anybody but George Raft, I'd be running up there. No, that's really unfair of me to say. But I think because she became so big a star so fast, that she was a little bit above genre pictures, and that was part of the reason why. I mean, you look at like Rita Hayworth is kind of a similar case, right? People call Gilda a film noir, but that was certainly not the intention when the movie was made at Columbia. And then she made that picture, and then of course the whole thing with Orson Welles. Would she have made The Lady from Shanghai were it not for Orson Welles? That's, and it's kind of the same thing. She didn't really make any other noir films. Ava Gardner didn't make any other noir films. I think they're just too big, I mean, you could argue that Liz Taylor made one, A Place in the Sun, but who really considers A Place in the Sun to be a film noir? It's too big. It's too much of an A picture for people to consider it a genre piece.
I'm going to have to check out Whistle Stop. I know it's streaming in a lot of places, probably not very good in shape,
I
very
can
good
guarantee
shape.
it's not in good shape.
I bet it's not.
But you
So
can
here,
see it.
oh, yeah. So here's a question about really the process of what you guys do. This is from another one of my Great Movies regulars, Jerry Lockwood. And one of my recommendations a couple of weeks ago to my group was Woman on the Run, which is available on Canopy.
Mhm.
And Jerry asks, he says that I know that the Film Noir Foundation did the restoration, but the opening credits also mention the UCA Film and Television Archive with additional funding provided by the Hollywood Press Association. So Jerry's question is, on the Film Noir Foundation website, there is a list of film restorations, fundings, and fosterings. What is fostering, and can you explain how these groups work together to restore and save classic films?
Sure. Fostering is where, boy, I hope there are no executives watching from fostering literally is where you point out to the owners of a film library something that they don't know they have. That's what fostering is. And like, if you make a new print of this, we will show it and get it back in circulation and bring new life to the film. So there have been, quite a few examples of that, where either we have preserved the film by making a brand new 35 millimeter print of material that someone else owns, but they don't have any intention of making a screenable print. It's just a negative. That's a preservation. A restoration is where the negative usually does not exist. And you have to go out, it's the detective story. You have to go out and find it. You very often are collecting many different pieces, and then you're putting it together. The way the partnership works. So in essence, let me put it to you this way. If film restoration was a bus, right? The UCLA Film and Television Archive owns the bus. I'm driving the bus. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association may very well pay for the gas that keeps that bus moving, right? I mean, that's sort of how it works, right? And I'm going to say right off the bat, I mean, if you put me at the UCLA archive in one of those clean rooms and said, here you go, Eddie, restore this film, I would have no idea what to do. Zero, right? I mean, I'm the tour guide. I'm the guy who picks the destination on the map and says, believe me, when we get there, it's going to be worth it. But I don't know how to fix that bus. I don't know how to tinker with it. I don't know any of the mechanics of it. That's where I rely on our colleagues, the Nancy Meisels and the Scott McQueens and the Todd Weiners and the Eddie Richmonds of the world. These people enable that bus to move.
Yeah.
And I'm one of many drivers that they work with to say, I've come up with something that's a valuable project. I'm going to go out and help and raise money for it, and we're going to get this going. So that's how that works. I hope that was a sufficient and coherent answer.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it's a great question, and a lot of people, including myself, didn't really know, all the ins and outs of it, like who's responsible for what. But that makes perfect sense. I mean, we can we can visualize that.
Yeah, and there are it happens in different ways. When I first started doing this, I was a total pain in the ass. I was a squeaky wheel, and I would just badger studios no end to get prints that they had no interest in screening. I remember I would bug Todd Weiner at UCLA about the Prowler, because I was looking for, I didn't, when I started doing this, I did not know where to go to look for missing films. I had no connections at film archives, nothing. So it really was on the job training. And in some instances, I go out and find the films and bring it to UCLA. On other occasions, UCLA will say, somebody just deposited a collection of films, we think this one might be a film noir. What do you know about it? And then if it, it's like, hey, this is great. Let's do this. Let's restore it. And they know that when it comes to noir, it's better off getting me involved than not having me involved, because I can now do so much with the product at the end, right? I mean, I got a show on TCM now, for God's sakes, So it's like we can actually get these films seen, which is a huge part of what we do. And honestly, that's something that makes my approach to all of this a little different than other people, is folks who were into film and restoration and like physically working with the film. That's all fabulous, right? I came in all the way at the opposite end. I came to it through film exhibition. Like I start at the end. Like I'm interested in showing the final product, right? Not finding a missing film, raising the money to restore it, and then asking the question, well, who actually wants to see it? Right? Which is a huge thing. It's amazing how much stuff gets restored because it's historically significant, but there really isn't an audience for it. You're preserving it for posterity and because it's important, but not a lot of people are going to sit there and watch it. Well, we know that thankfully noir has a huge audience, right? And so, and then there are instances where like the Library of Congress will come to me and say, we want you to help us manage what we have in inventory and decide which of these things, how should we prioritize the restorations? What can you work with? I mean, what do we have here that actually has value? Because, everything is in flux, right? So, I mean, the Library of Congress is not this monolithic thing, this institution. I mean, it has to justify its existence like everybody else, right? So they want to restore films that people are actually going to watch. So hence, I now have a relationship with the Library of Congress, and I hope there's many more films to come out of that.
So that leads to a question that is kind of in the same ballpark as that. Jan Willis from Memphis, a great guy, he has a question. With the ownership of noir films that need restoring shrinking down to a smaller and smaller group of soulless corporations only interested in the bottom line, what is your strategy for helping these films survive and thrive?
Well, you've been reading my emails, Jan. No. My strategy is, man, I'm glad I got this gig on TCM. I mean, that was not a strategy. That was, thank you very much, Charlie Tavish and Scott McGee. Everybody at TCM who said, let's just give this guy a show, because that makes a huge difference, right? The strategy is really simple, and it's what I've been doing all along. You have to convince people that there is an audience for this. I don't like it when these entities, I'll call them, these entities refer to viewers as eyeballs. That, which is a very, very common expression in the business. How many eyeballs are on it? How many eyeballs we got on that? As though they aren't people watching these movies, right? They're just eyeballs, right? And I always want to ask them, so do you count 2 eyeballs? Are you doubling the numbers for these movies? Because everybody has 2. I mean, and then what happens if the guy has a patch? You have to subtract that eyeball, I mean, I hate that term. But this is fairly common. But you do what I've been doing. You convince people that there's an audience. And the reason you convince them there's an audience is because the audience has money. And when they put money down to watch the movies, that's what matters. And that's all there is to it. I mean, it's the American way, and I'm not saying it's the best way. I'm not saying it's but that is the way, right? You got to prove its commercial value. And I got to tell you, we have pulled a lot of films out of vaults that the owners did not even know they had. And I have made money for them by doing that. And that's what has to happen. And then, of course, you hope that they're not, I'm interpreting soulless as me, because I don't expect these people to grasp the cultural and artistic significance of anything. But where I get upset is where the money is not enough, right? And I've been in that position where they say, so you want to do a set of this movies and 8-film thing of how many units do you think you're going to sell? And if you say like 10,000, which in any sane part of the world, 10,000 units of film is good. But in some of these entities, if you'd said 100,000, we might have had something to talk about. And it's like, are you insane? There's not 100,000 people that are going to buy this. That's absurd. You're dreaming. I mean, come back to reality and we can have a conversation. And their reality is numbers.
Yeah.
And my reality is passion. Like, I can guarantee you're going to get 10,000 passionate people who are going to buy this and want to watch it. I know that, right? If you're saying I want 100,000, which one of us is insane?
Absolutely. And those 10,000 people are going to be willing to shell out more than $10, $20. I mean, collectors and people that love this stuff are going to pay $40 or
As
more.
Peter Becker, Criterion knows very well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he understands his audience and he prices things accordingly, which allows Criterion to stay in business and keep doing what they're doing. Now they have a great streaming service. He understood the market extremely well.
Well, I think we got people hammering at the gates here
Okay.
on the chat. So I'm going to turn it over to Darnice and let her unleash the questions.
Okay, we've got quite a few going on, so I'm going to combine a few of them. Some of them had some similar things. One of the questions from Debbie M is, what books about film noir, other than yours, of course, would you recommend most reading?
I have to start by saying that in May of 2021, my Dark City, The Lost World of Film Noir will be reissued in a revised and expanded edition, which is now at the publishers. I finally got that done, and I was picking a lot of new photos for it today. So that's very cool.
Shameless plug, but awesome.
but I just want people to know that that's actually happening because it's been in the works for a long time. I like Foster Hirsch's book, Dark Side of the Screen. I think that's a really good book. I'm going to draw, the original encyclopedia, the Film Noir Encyclopedia, an encyclopedic reference to the American style by Alan Silver and Elizabeth Ward. That was kind of the first book on film noir that I think I ever got, and it's been through many editions. It's a valuable tome. I mean, I'm looking at a whole shelf of these books over here. I should be able to come up with something. But what's interesting is I tend to read everything, all kinds of film books that aren't specifically about film noir, because I'm trying to broaden my understanding of the people who made the films. I think I have a pretty good grasp right now of what created film noir in Hollywood. There's a great book called City of Nets that's just about Hollywood in the 40s and explains a lot about the factors that led up to it happening when it happened, but it's not specifically about film noir movies. But it gives you a really, really great background into why it happened when it did. So Otto Friedrich is the author. That's a good one. Okay, so I'm going to stop at those three.
No, that's a good one. Okay, so a couple of questions actually were about the cost to restore films. So what is the cost of restoration, including the cost of converting to digital, or is that a low priority? And how much does it typically cost to restore a film noir from the 1940s or 50s?
Okay. It all varies depending on the length of the film and the condition of the original elements. the worse condition they're in, and the more substandard the elements are, the more expensive the restoration is going to be. If you are restoring a film that's 90 minutes or longer, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you're restoring a 63 or 65-minute film, something like that. We do have a huge advantage in being film noir, that we're restoring black and white as opposed to color, which is a lot less expensive, but it's also now that comes with its own problems because there aren't that many labs that actually handle black and white film anymore. So no offense to my partners, but it is getting to the point where they can set their own price and you can't say anything about it because you can't take the job across town because a lot of these labs are now the only game in town. So and I have seen the price go up considerably from the early days. The Prowler was the first film that we restored, and I think the total cost of that restoration was somewhere around $30,000. And now I would say you are automatically looking at anywhere between $85,000 and $100,000 for anything between 78 and 90 minutes. That's what you're going to end up having to pay. There's always a contingency thing in the budget. You can do it like a pick and choose thing. Like I don't want to do an intermediate digital step or something, but I can tell you right now that with the pandemic, it is changing our thinking about that, I don't want to shock anybody here, but we need to seriously start thinking about going right to digital. Because that's how we're going to get the money back if we don't have festivals, right? So it's like we're doing a digital restoration, and then down the road, we may raise the money to do what's called a film out and transfer the digital onto film to have a true preserved artifact, which I believe is hugely important because we know what the shelf life of film is. We do not know digitally what its archival and preservation, how that's going to work. You get a big electrical surge or an electrical thing goes through an archive, you wipe out all the information on the files and everything, right? Likewise, something that could kill film like vinegar syndrome, which is a thing that it's a communicable disease that happens to film, that's not going to happen to digital. Right. So these are all the things that you have to balance when you're considering how much you're going to spend to get it done.
What kind of leads into a question we have from Lauren that says, are there many U.S. film noirs in nitrate? If you can name some of the bigger, well-known ones, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, UCLA in the vault has a whole nitrate vault that's was designed to preserve nitrate film, and it's nothing but nitrate. And I've seen several of those. I've seen Laura in nitrate. I've seen Nightmare Alley in nitrate. I've seen Black Narcissus in nitrate. That was a trip. Yes, they're there. I don't know if everybody listening knows what the thing. I mean, nitrate film is extremely flammable. It has it has a silver content in it that provides for a much more lustrous black and white image than you're used to seeing. But at a certain point, it became, it was so dangerous to project nitrate film that as, I don't want to say as projection standards declined, but as there were more and more theaters and more people getting into owning theaters independently, it just became impossible for nitrate to survive. So they switched to what's called safety film. And for an obvious reason, it doesn't burn like nitrate burns. But you would be amazed, like when the studios got rid of nitrate, I'm telling you, they didn't all save the films. A lot of studios stripped the silver out of the film and then dumped the films in the ocean. I kid you not. If off the coast of California, if you get down there to the bottom of the ocean, you're going to find a lot of film cans. Yeah.
That hurts my heart.
Me too. Yeah.
Nothing.
Okay, so we've got quite a few. Wow. So how amenable are studios to striking new 35 millimeter prints of their library materials just for a few showings?
They were. I was very proud of the fact that I established relationships with a lot of the people who governed the vaults. Vice presidents of assets and things like that. And those people are not soulless. They're really, really good people. But I have to say, they were older people, and they are retiring. And I don't know that those kinds of relationships will continue to exist. I just lost a valued colleague the other day because the studio just let her go, and that's a tough one. That is really tough to handle because we've been through a few. There are a few very trusted colleagues that I've had, in the whatever it is, 20 years I've been doing this. I don't. There's one person that I know who is still in the job that he had when I started. And that's Grover Crisp at Sony, and I think he is the only one in charge of the film vault that is still in charge of the film vault. So it's a challenge. It really is difficult, and there is no substitute for the personal relationship. The most surprising thing about all of this is how small this world is. Like when Andy was saying it coming up, we have all of these other guests. I know all those people. Right? I know Todd. I know Eric. When they say, "Oh, we're thinking of working with this company in Paris," it's like, I know that guy. He's great. Yeah, I trust him completely. There just aren't that many people who do this, who are in digital publishing or run archives and film vaults and things. And I knew none of them when I started, and I know them all now. But they're not all going to be there forever, right? So
Right. They've got a passion. They'll do it as long as they're allowed to do it, probably just like you.
indeed they do.
So we've got a couple other questions about classic movies, old movies. What do you think of the visual quality of classic movies when they're shown in regular movie theaters? Are today's theaters better or worse than the classic, gigantic theaters? Is there Blu-rays offering better quality lately?
Huh. Okay, that is
Those are two different questions, but
well, but they're linked.
similar. Yeah.
Um, Poor projection is poor projection, whether it's a new movie or a classic movie. And any movie theater that has concessionaires operating the projection booth, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go see a movie there. Brand new theater opened in my town, and I went to see Iron Man on the day it opened, and the film broke.
Oh my
On
God.
day one. On day one, the film broke. Right? And that is because they were using what's called a platter system to project the films, and they were having the guy running the concession stand actually operating the projection system.
Yeah.
So, which meant that every screening after that one was flawed. Every single one. So that's not good. Nothing beats a good 35 millimeter print properly projected in a movie theater. That's it. A ancillary point that I want to make has to do with people watching classic films on high definition monitors at home, complaining about the quality of the print, because not all of those movies have been digitally enhanced to survive the upgrade to high definition. So that's a detail that I think should be explained to people. To me, it's just like saying, is it in black and white or is it in color? Is it in high def or isn't it in high def? Because if you're watching a movie, I got a really irate letter from this guy last week because I showed Danger Signal on TCM, which is not a film that has been upgraded to high def, you know, and he said, you should be embarrassed to show that movie on TCM. That's just ridiculous and blah blah blah. And I said, well, he was watching it on a 60-inch high def monitor, and it was not upgraded to withstand that. There are many cases in which the job of cinematographers, particularly in the 30s and 40s, where black and white film was concerned, their job was to hide the shortcomings of the production through their artistry, right? I mean, it's like we know that the Queen's bed is nothing but plywood and gilt paint on plywood. And the guy says, don't worry, the way I light it and the way it looks on film, it's going to look great. It's going to look fantastic. Well, you show that film on high definition on a 60-inch monitor, when you're sitting 4 feet away from it, it's going to look like paint on plywood because high def reveals these things that were never meant to be revealed. So you have to be very cautious about that. And, sometimes it looks spectacular, like Predator of Sierra Madre in the upgraded digitally enhanced version looks sensational. You can count every little piece of stubble on Bogart's face. It's extraordinary, but not everything gets that treatment. So that's my caution.
Okay, that's great. So a couple of questions about Fox and the Disney acquisition.
Here's where I get in big trouble.
Yeah, this is kind of it's a touchy subject. But so just a general, like, getting your thoughts on Disney's acquisition and the hoarding of the old 20th century titles with no plans to distribute them or make them available. Seems like Blu-rays and DVDs would be a great way to introduce people to these films, but that's being blocked. Do you see hope for seeing any of these titles again in the future?
I'm not going to say I'm hopeless because that is against my character. That is not the same as saying that I see no cause for optimism. Those are two different thoughts. Now, like when I'm telling you that people who run archives have ideas about things and they're not soulless, I don't want to generalize about the people that run these corporations, but they do think they know what they're doing, and they don't always know what they're doing, and they don't always have the best idea, right? This kind of goes back to what I was saying, where they said if you'd set 100,000 units, you'd have my attention. 10,000, you don't have anything. So they look at old movies and they say, really, the numbers just don't seem to be adding up. I mean, I know for a fact that a lot of stuff at Fox that has been discussed is like, well, now we have all this stuff that we own the rights to that we can do remakes of, right? This is a school of thought that, of course, is ridiculous because they're only going to remake the movies that are good to begin with, which don't need to be remade, right? But Darnese, I don't know how to get out of this because I don't really feel that optimistic about it. My genuine hope is that there is a place for classic cinema that is maintained in the American cultural mainstream. That's what I sincerely hope. I am very, very close in that stream right now. I mean, I am as close to the decision making as you can be without being a decision maker. So right now, I feel relatively optimistic overall, but I can't speak to the Fox Disney thing directly. I mean, which doesn't mean ask me about AT&T and Warner Brothers. That's who I do work for. So I'll leave it there.
Well, okay, so I just someone mentioned that you covered this topic with Mr. Weiner. So wondered if you had any information about their intent on restoring what they have, or what
You mean, I'm not precisely sure. You mean Todd Weiner at
Time
UCLA?
Weiner. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Uh, yes, I mean, um, I talk to Todd all the time about this, and like, is there stuff that's come in that we may be interested in participating in the restoration of it? So yeah, that definitely. But people need to understand ownership of the movie is essential. If you look at the films that the Film Noir Foundation has restored, they are films where the ownership is in question, right? Or they are orphan films that have been abandoned by whatever entity originally owned them, or they are owned by an entity that is now not in a position to preserve and maintain the film. And then you are able to make a deal with them, right? I am not able to make a deal with 20th Century Fox and Disney. They're going to do whatever it is that they want to do, right?
Hmm.
So I'm very, very cautious when people say, this movie needs a restoration, and I say, yeah, but that movie is owned by, and you can fill in the blank, right? It's Universal, Paramount, MGM, UA, Warner Brothers, Fox, Sony that owns the Columbia Library. Those movies are owned by those entities, right? So if I spent $100,000 restoring it, I'm doing it for somebody who has all the money in the world to do it themselves, and they just choose not to. So, and then I don't want to end up in a situation where I'm paying using the good money that our supporters give us to restore a film so that I then have the privilege of paying the owner to show that film that I've just restored. That's somehow that doesn't
It's
compute
crazy.
in
Yeah,
my
yeah.
small little mind.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. We got quite a couple of questions about North City. And one of them was saying thank you for this event tonight, because North City Detroit was actually supposed to start today. And so they never got a chance to go there. So they appreciate having this. But excuse me, do you plan on playing films shown at North City, San Francisco, in the DC, um, in Noir City, DC later this
Yeah.
year or next year? And do you ever worry that you're going to run out of how you say this, rare noir
No, that is,
festivals?
I never put those two words together because it's so
Yeah, it's very hard to
get out of
say,
your
isn't
mouth.
it? Quite the tongue twister.
Yeah, you want to put film in between, rare film noir.
Rare film noir. Oh, yeah, that
Rare
makes it
noir.
much better. Thank you.
That was the plan, because that's an essential part of the economics of what we do.
Right.
Is when I convince a studio to make a print of something, I tell them, look, I've got 8 festivals that bear the brand of Noir City, plus all these other museums and things that will show it once we bring it back to light. So you're going to get your plays out of it. It's worthwhile. Okay. So yes, it was important to me to show essentially the same program in all these different regions, right?
Right.
Seattle, LA, Chicago, Boston, Detroit, Washington, D.C. What changes now, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, what changes now is if we have to move to an online version, there's nothing regional online, right? I mean, I'm in California right now talking to you guys, and there's
Right.
nothing regional about this. I mean, anybody watching this can be anywhere in the world, actually.
Yeah.
So this makes film programming and festival programming very, very challenging, because what's going to happen is just like with any retailer, Todd Hitchcock in DC is going to say, well, we want to show this program, but you're not going to show the same movies elsewhere, right? Because then people don't have to come to us to see them. So this is something we really have to look at long and hard. And it may be that we end up breaking the festivals down into smaller shows, and then leaving the films up for people to stream for a finite amount of time. Like if you buy in, you have 3 days in which to watch the film. Mm-hmm. And then when we move on and do it again in 3 months, it would be a whole new slate of films.
Right.
And it would be smart if we did that and they were somehow interconnected, so that the same audience who watched the first festival has a reason to come and watch the next installment of the festival, where you're not going to see the same films, but you might see the same theme in the screenings, right? So, I mean, you guys are hearing this straight from the horse's mouth, because none of this stuff has been done yet. I mean, we're thinking of this right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's so wonderful.
Insider information. That's great.
Yeah, and it sounds like a perfect solution to an imperfect situation that we're in.
Right.
That
I
would
just
be
have to
that
figure
would be
out how it works.
Yeah.
I got one last question necessarily. I mean, we can talk a little bit more, but one of the questions was, where do you find the new old films, the ones that are unknown, the ones that you want to restore, and how does the foundation look up on these?
Through personal contacts. There is no substitute for that. So oddly, I have now played a somewhat significant role in revitalizing Argentine cinema outside of Argentina. And that is entirely due to my colleague, Fernando Martin Peña, who I met in Buenos Aires in 2008. And none of this would have happened if Fernando and I had not recognized each other as brothers. And we trust each other. And he does the grunt work in Argentina. They don't have the money to do these restorations. And then I take care of that on this end, and then we get the films back in circulation. And this is how it works. You have to be able to travel a little bit. You have to know who's who and have them accept you. And then the doors kind of open up, and then you hope that those are vault doors. That's like the key, right? So we have a very good track record. The Film Noir Foundation has an extremely good track record in terms of the quality of the films that we've restored, their historical significance, the fact that we waste nobody's money, and the fact that we're able to actually get an audience to watch the films. That has caught people's attention.
So then, just one more thing. There's was a couple of movies that you mentioned that were going to be on Blu-ray or DVD earlier in the discussion. Jerry, who we mentioned before, wanted to know if the foundation planned on selling any of them as a fundraising effort.
It all is a fundraising effort as far as we're concerned. I mean, yeah, we work with Flicker Alley, and Flicker Alley is a for-profit company. The Film Noir Foundation is a non-profit foundation. So we put in our share to get the stuff done. We spend the money to do the special features and all this extra stuff. And of course, we have funded the original restoration of the film through the help of our, Hollywood Foreign Press Charitable Trust, or all the donors and other grants that we might get. But yeah, we get a percentage of the DVD sales, and Blu-ray sales that just goes right back into the Film Noir Foundation war chest. I mean, that's how that works.
Awesome.
And there will be many more coming in 2021. I think we'll have a number of films available, and you know, I do have cause for optimism on that score. And if there are other questions and you guys don't mind, I mean, I am getting a low battery thing here on my computer.
Oh no, okay.
No, but I can plug that in. It's not a
okay. Well, I was going to ask you, Eddie, how much time you have left, or your computer.
I'm Andy. It's a
bound
pandemic.
by technology
It's a
sometimes.
pandemic, right? I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
And quite honestly, I'm 3 hours behind you guys, so my day is not officially over. It's only 5:12 where I am. So
You've got a lot left in you.
Yeah. Well, let us know when you need to cut it off.
Okay.
Because we could keep this going.
We can talk about this. We can talk about these things all night.
It's when I'm just nothing but a glowing thing here, because you know I'm on the second story. My office is on the second story of my house, and because I tape Noir Alley in this spot very often, if I'm not out in my lounge, I have to have, you can't see it over here, but the windows are all blacked out. We have to shoot in the daytime, and I don't want my office it has to look somewhat noirish. And so it's blacked out. And then when it's 90 degrees out, like it is right now, and the windows are blacked out and I'm on the second story, it's hot. It's really, really hot in here right now. And in order to be able to see me, I have to have one of these.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm glowing.
Well, we don't want you to be miserable, so
no.
We'll do a few more minutes. If that's okay.
I very much enjoy talking to you guys, and this is it. This is what I do. I mean, this is an important part of my job, right? For the Film Noir Foundation, is I need to know what people are interested in, and this is how you find out. You know, it reminds me of when I did somebody came to Noir City. This lovely woman from Scotland, and she was doing her MBA. She was, and her thesis was on the Noir City Film Festival. And she said, "I would like to study your demographics. Do you have your demographics that I can look at? So you know, like what percentage of the audience is women and what the age breakdown is and everything." And I said to her, "We keep track of the demographics right here." Sorry, but I actually stand on stage and introduce every movie, and I can see the audience. So I mean, it's not scientific, but I know exactly what my audience looks like. And I said, and to me, nothing matters except they love movies.
Yeah.
That's the demographic of my audience.
Yeah.
The bottom line is these are people who love movies, because I see the same people sitting in the same seats night after night after night.
Yeah, you've got to have your regulars, but that actually brings up something that Liz wanted to know is, have you seen a surge of interest in old movies or noir, even as theater going has shut down? I know that there's a lot of venues and places for people to do it, but over the years that you've been doing this Noir City, having some problems there.
Yes.
Has obviously you've expanded to other cities, you've expanded your reach. How have you seen the interest grown?
It has unquestionably grown. Now the thing that's obvious is, because of social media and the internet and everything, it's more connected. Now, if you wanted to argue the opposite side of that, you could say, no, it hasn't grown, it's always been there. The people just haven't been able to connect the way that they can connect now. And I can tell you, because we are constantly soliciting donors to the Film Noir Foundation, that those donors come from everywhere. I'm not joking, everywhere. We have somebody from Bangladesh who is a donor to the Film Noir Foundation. They come from all over the world, and they are every age. because I get the most beautiful handwritten letters from people in like retirement homes who watch Noir Alley, and then they write their personal stories of
Wonderful.
where they saw this movie and blah 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 and why it means so much. And that, but I also get a lot of communication from younger people who are just getting into this. You know, I've never seen a noir before. This is fabulous. I love all this. That's really, really significant, and something I learned early on, thanks to my colleague Anita Manga, who was the programmer at the Castro Theater. And when I first programmed there, I was a little, I had like programmeritis, which is this thing where you have to show something that nobody else has ever shown to prove that you are the exceptional programmer. Right? I found this thing and nobody else knows anything about this movie. That's good, but you also have to realize that if you show Double Indemnity, a certain percentage of that audience has never seen it before. Right. And you're giving them the chance to see it in 35 millimeter in a movie theater. It's worth showing the classics. And then I developed through Anita's counsel, I kind of developed this idea of what you really want to do is show the tentpole noir. You want to show Out of the Past or Double Indemnity or The Maltese Falcon, but you want to show it with a totally obscure film that somehow relates to it. Like, you know, through an obscure film by the same director or on the same general subject or by the same author. You know, like here's a Hammett, you know, thing that you haven't seen, you know, when you show The Maltese Falcon. So it's all over the place. Plus, I have to give a big shout out to all of the vintage gals who are a huge part of our following. And the noir festivals are a lightning rod for younger women who love mid-century style. And they have brought so much to the festivals through their participation. And it also points out that for many, many years, people who talked about noir and wrote about noir felt it was a very male-dominated genre, or you know, and they talk about that. You know, it's about fear of women, women in the workplace in the 40s, and that's why there were these femme fatales in noir and all this stuff. And the reality that we see now is that it is a complete gender split in the fan base for noir. It is absolutely down the middle, as many men as women, young women, older women, same thing, you know. It is remarkable. And I think I think I got my gig on TCM because I was talking to somebody in a position of some authority there about what I do with film noir, and I said, film noir is the gateway drug to classic cinema.
It certainly is.
And I think that was the single line that got me my job.
And we love you being our pusher.
That's right. We keep coming back to you.
We do. We actually had a question in the chat about that. So what would you consider, I won't ask you what's, you know, the noir that people should watch if they're newbies, but if you're a newbie, should you on-ramp with indie, low budget, verite, studio?
For film noir?
Yeah.
Oh, you watch Double Indemnity or Out of the Past. I mean, that's it. And if honestly, if those films don't spark something in you, if you watch Double Indemnity or Out of the Past and you say, yeah, well, you know, that was whatever, then I guess noir is not for you. Because if you have some built-in resistance to Robert Mitchum and Jane Greer, I don't know that my 300-page book is going to reach you. If Robert Mitchum and Jane Greer do not reach you, I cannot do anything. You know?
Oh, that's hilarious.
So true. So
It's
true.
so very true.
But I will also add this. You know, I used to, when this was possible, I used to actually go out and talk at schools because I very much, I want young people to appreciate history,
Mhm.
right? To me, that's the ultimate thing. It's not just movies. Movies are the way to hook them, right? And then once you get them hooked, then you give them the background and you explain this is the context in which all this happened, you know. And noir is great for that because I always showed the scene where Fred McMurray and Barbara Stanwyck meet in Double Indemnity, and I asked these kids, these high school kids, like, so what's that scene about? And the kids are great. They go, he wants to her so bad. and, and I'm like, yes, you understand. You do understand what is going on. But this is what that looked like in 1944, right? And these are the reasons they couldn't show it on screen, right? They couldn't be so blatant. But once you validate that their instincts are right on, then you can get them to watch it in a more, you know what I'm saying.
Appreciate it more. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
you understand that there's context, and then I always end up by saying, you do realize that your grandparents did that, right? that
Just
was
like that,
it,
right?
You know, when they saw this movie, they went home, and they did things, and that's why you're here today,
That's why
right?
you're here.
Eddie Muller ruining the minds of young people.
No, I'm
Phil,
not ruining the minds.
no,
No, not at all.
I am using their minds, you know, for the way they are and leading them to something they may not have thought about before.
And they get it too. I mean, they like you said, they understand it. And Darnice and I spend so much time. We've spent so much time lately talking about the production code and why movies do the things they do and why you can't do the things you don't see in films. And especially the younger ones, when they get it, they're like, oh, well, that's why they couldn't do that. That's why when Robert Mitchum and Jane Greer in Out of the Past, the door shuts and there's a storm going on outside. It makes perfect sense to them then.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I'm throwing in a quick pitch for this Saturday night on TCM. I'm showing Gilda.
Yes.
And my outro to Gilda had to be vetted by the top rank at TCM. Is he really going there with this? Holy cow!
Well,
so it passed and no cuts were made. So
that's good. That's good.
So that was good.
It's great. That's wonderful.
We've got a sort of eclectic question here. So it seems like you may have gone to the 1978 tour of Bruce Springsteen, the Winterland tour.
Boy, this is coming.
There you go.
Yes.
So someone mentioned that they wanted you to share a memory of your presence there because they said that this is Jan, which you mentioned before. Noir has a major impact on Bruce Springsteen and even have a little collection inspired by his music. So can you share a little bit something about that?
Nebraska is the Noir album, Bruce's Noir album. Yeah, I can't remember how old I was then. I was what, 20? I was 20 years old. And man, I tell you, it was life-changing. The first night because this was not long before Winterland closed. I know Tom Petty closed Winterland. But
for those of us who don't know what Winterland is.
Winterland was a former sports venue. It was a boxing venue turned into a skating venue, an ice skating venue. It was Dreamland when it was boxing, then it was Winterland when they iced it over. And then eventually it became this legendary rock and roll, I was going to say palace, but it was really kind of a big dump. It was a big barn, at Post and Steiner Streets in San Francisco, and all these great bands played there. And the Last Waltz, the band's Last Waltz concert was their farewell show was at Winterland. Anyway, yeah, I stood on line for that first show. I was on the floor about not too far back from the stage, and that was the first time I'd ever seen Bruce live, and it was, like I say, it was life changing. And I went back the next night and I met a woman online, Susie Shaw, and we ended up sitting together up in the balcony, and we're lifelong friends. She has sadly passed away, but Susie was a lifelong dear friend of mine that I met in that line the second night. That was the night that Bruce forgot the words to "Racing in the Street." I remember that, because he was kind of looked right up and he's like, I forgot the words, And it was like he was almost looking at me like, dude, come on, got a 69 Chevy with a 396, fuely heads, and a hearse on the floor, come on, man, get with it. Yes, and Bruce has always been a constant with me. I just think the guy's amazing.
Awesome. That was great. I love non-related, movie-related.
Yeah, that's okay. I do more than just watch movies.
I think we all do. One of the things that I like to ask Andy when we have these theaters is if you have a favorite. Now I know you probably don't in the grand scheme of thing, and you've mentioned Derek, your pinnacle, Double Indemnity. But if there was a movie that you would watch over and over again at any given time, what would that one movie be?
It's the movie that Andy has a poster for right over his shoulder. In a Lonely Place. That's the bookmark suspense picture with there's something twist. That's my movie. In a Lonely Place. In a Lonely Place.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was my that was my mom's favorite movie too, by the way.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is that poster always there, or did you put that there because you knew I was coming on?
No, I'm in the process of renovating my office, and it's going to go where you can't see it right now above me, and I just haven't had time to get a frame for that. And the killer is over here behind me.
I was going to say, now I was going to really impress you because I only saw the back of Ava Gardner's head.
And you knew it.
Say that's the killers.
That's awesome.
Those are real, and those are original one sheets.
No, these are copies. They're not originals. I'm a librarian. They don't pay us enough for that.
Those are, I don't have either of those posters, and because those are a little pricey.
Yeah.
I do have an original Out of the Past one sheet.
Oh wow.
Oh, so someone just asked about that. Is Out of the Past available in nitrate? Do you know? Mm-hmm. And can nitrate truly be seen on BR or 4K?
No. Nitrate can only be seen in a movie theater. It's a big deal because the theater has to be approved for a nitrate screening, and not every projection booth is anymore. So it's very interesting. The Egyptian Theater in Hollywood is now a nitrate approved booth. And that was through a grant that they received, I think, from the Hollywood Foreign Press Association to upgrade the booth so that they could actually show nitrate. Because UCLA is the best source of nitrate prints. That's a good question. I don't know about Out of the Past, but I can certainly find out. I mean, I could just ask UCLA for their database to see what's in that nitrate collection. But I know that where the sidewalk ends, there's a nitrate print of that because we were going to show it at the Egyptian Theater, and we were halfway through the Noir City Festival in March, and then the pandemic happened, and that was the end of it. So it was very funny. Somebody the other day asked me, Eddie, do you remember the last person you shook hands with? Right? I haven't shaken hands with anybody since March, right? Not a single person have I shaken their hand. And I said, yeah, I do remember. The last person whose hand I shook was David Mamet,
Wow.
which is kind of weird. You know, it's not like, hey, David, if you're listening, it's not like I'm not going to wash my hands or something. But it was odd because we did an event together. That was the last thing I did in public before the clampdown. And I said goodnight to David, and we shook hands, and that's the last person I shook
That's awesome.
Wow. Well, Darnice, I know it's getting a little bit late. We've had Eddie on for an hour and a half, and we would love to do more, but I know you have things you need to do. Darnice, why don't we take two more questions? Eddie's two more.
Yeah, got two.
Is good.
One is from Scott. He wants to know, will Los Tallos Amargos get a DVD release? Hope I'm saying that right.
Better than that, it'll get a Blu-ray release.
Ah, very nice.
Actually, because it's Flickr Alley, it will get a Blu-ray and a DVD release.
Awesome.
With special features and a little booklet and the whole thing. And that will be coming in 2021. As will another Argentine film that we've restored, La Bestia debe morir, The Beast Must Die. That will also be coming out on Blu-ray, which is really cool. I'm sure Andy is familiar with the novel The Beast Must Die by Nicholas Blake.
Blake,
yeah, it really is sort of a landmark in psychological suspense because it was a detective story in which the first 3/4 of the book are the diary of the killer, which is very unusual. And the movie just does that. It kind of sidelines the detective. Remember, Nigel Strangeways was Blake's detective. It sidelines him and just focuses on the subjective tale of the killer hunting down, I am going to kill a man. I don't know his name. I don't know where he lives, but I'm going to find him and I'm going to kill him. That's the first lines of the book. That is noir, right? So that will be coming out too.
Ooh, looking forward to that one. Okay, so last question. What is your favorite noir poster?
It better be out of the past. It better be, because I paid more for that than anything in my life except my house and my car.
Really? And where is it? Where do you have it hanging in your house?
No.
No. Oh, you're waiting.
I have a storage unit that is filled with flat files full of movie posters and stuff. So that's where it is, sadly. I do have, if I could swing this around, see here, I'll tilt this up. You can see that behind me is an Italian Locandina poster for a film called Tomorrow is Another Day. That's Ruth Roman standing over the bloodied body of Steve Cochran. So I do put up posters, but I don't have that one.
Gotcha.
And there are a lot of great movie. I mean, Out of the Past is my favorite American movie poster. There are other posters from other countries, mostly of American films that I absolutely love. I have a beautiful Italian poster for Sam Fuller's Underworld USA that I love.
Is he grabbing another poster?
and Eddie won't do it, but I'm going to plug his book, The Art
there
of
you
Noir,
go.
which
Someone just plugged it in the chat.
Absolutely gorgeous. You must own it if you love film and film posters as well.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, I have one other question for you, and I know probably most people that have joined us tonight already know the answer to this, but if we want to do something to help out with film preservation and restoration, what can we do?
In a very tangible way for the Film Noir Foundation, just sign up for the mailing list and make a donation. You get the Noir City magazine, which is fabulous. I can't believe all the great people we get to write for that magazine. It's sensational. I would say convince younger people to watch old movies, right? And don't give up I mean, that's imperative to maintain the audience. My big fear is that the technology is going to outpace our ability to comprehend stuff, and that we're going to start doing things just for the sake of technology, right? I thought about this when this fella griped at me because the print of Danger Signal wasn't good enough for his HD monitor. And I very much dread that kind of attitude, because then little by little, you're going to end up with those people who are in charge of the inventory of film at these various studios saying, well, it seems that the American people want everything in HD. So we have enough stuff in HD in inventory. Let's just leave it at that and cut off everything else. And then there's all this stuff that's never going to migrate to high definition that you're never going to see. And I mean, the warning shot has been sounded because of this Disney Fox thing, right? That they're basically saying, sorry, you can't get 35 prints of Fox movies anymore because we don't see the value in it. That's the thing that isn't good. And so I'm saying something incredibly simple here. Don't be that guy, right? Don't limit your intake of classic material, whether it's film or books or music or anything. Don't limit it by virtue of how it is delivered, because all these tech companies want you to get the latest thing and then dispose of the one that's a year old, because now you have to transfer everything over. Oh, all that stuff that you just transferred over from your albums onto your well, that's no good anymore. Now you have to do this. They're playing you. They are playing you. So it doesn't matter, right? The content is what matters. The way it's delivered to you. I'm going to end this by saying something, and Andy, you know this. I got off social media today, right? I mean, I posted a thing saying I am no longer going to have a personal presence on Facebook and Twitter, because I think that the content is being lost in this crossfire of people shouting at each other, and I don't see anything productive about it at all, right? If you're getting your news on the internet, you're a fool. I mean, basically, that's kind of the way I feel about that. You got to read some magazines. There's still people who adjudicate these things because they are experts, right? Listen to those experts, right? Open yourself up to the full breadth of what's available. Don't limit it based on how many pixels are on this thing you're holding in your hand. It's kind of ridiculous. So that was my soapbox. I hope you appreciate it. And yeah.
Well, Eddie, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight, and it's been just tremendous. And I want to thank everybody who's joined us too, that's been a part of the program. We certainly hope that
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much, and best of luck with everything with the Film Noir Foundation. And I can't wait until I see you at Noir City again someday.
Yeah,
hopefully
I look
soon.
forward to it.
Hopefully
Man,
soon.
I hope that we don't have to be. Well, even if we have to wear masks, I'm still going to give you a big hug.
Okay. One right back at you.
All right, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
That's great.
Thank you. Every night.
Have a great evening.
Take care, guys.
Yep.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Well, thanks again to everyone who joined us. Again, this was really, really a special night. And I would love for you to get in touch with me if you would like to be part of our other programs that we have. We basically do 2 programs a month. They're all on Friday nights. And if you would like to be added to our email list, again, my email address is awolverton@aacpl.net. Darnice, any closing thoughts?
No, just as usual. Thank you, Andy, for putting this together. It's great that you have these connections to some very interesting people, and I'm looking forward to our next presentation with Todd Hitchcock.
Well, thank you. And Darnice, I'm so thankful to have you with me. You are a dream. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks again, everybody.
Good night, and have
Good
a
night.
great weekend. Bye.